Well, Andrew Forrest has called on the Morrison government to move now and adopt a net zero emissions target. The chairman of Fortescue Metals says that more ambitious climate action is critical to attract foreign investors to Australia. Let's discuss this with my poly panel from Cessnock, Labor MP Joel Fitzgibbon, and from Brisbane, former Queensland Premier Campbell Newman. Campbell, Twiggy, of course, is entitled to his view, but listen to this statistic from the Australian Financial Review. Last financial year, the manufacturing steel in China with Fortescue iron ore caused 241 million tonnes of carbon emissions, more than all the combined annual emissions of Australia's export thermal coal sector. So it's not a very consistent position from Twiggy Forrest, is it?
Well, you can't make an omelette out breaking eggs, and you can't make steel without iron ore and good quality coking coal as well. Unfortunately, the Chinese seem to be buying more of that elsewhere these days. Look, I think Mr Forrest should probably butt out of advocating what our goals should be, given that he's passionate as well about green energy and hydrogen. And if he gets, by the way, some of the projects he's talking about, that's admirable, that's fantastic. But I think there is a bit of a conflict of interest here, pushing some of these things while at the same time then trying to get projects up to go green. And I think, do direct action, that's admirable. Stay out of the political debate about what our targets should be.
Well, while Twiggy's saying all of that and China is burning plenty of minerals, Australia has slashed its emissions, according to new data, Joel, from the National Greenhouse Gas Inventory. It says emissions fell 5% in the first year of the COVID pandemic, taking them to more than 20% below the 2005 levels. And surprise, surprise, of course, this is done without a carbon tax, without any net zero target. If we can get there without all of that, why do we need it? Your colleague, Chris Bowen, he wants even more than net zero by 2050. He wants an interim target, he says. Net zero 2050 is the bare minimum. Joel Fitzgibbon, do you support more than net zero?
No, I don't, Peter. And I think net zero emissions by 2050 is quite aspirational. But I do believe Australia can get there comfortably without necessarily forsaking traditional jobs. And there is a link here with the Twiggy story, because you're right, the carbon tax was a 20th century solution to what is now a 21st century challenge. And business long ago gave up waiting for the politicians who have been arguing this point for more than 20 years. They've moved without them. Now, Twiggy, it is a bit of an irony that Twiggy's making these points, but he's obviously a pretty good businessman making lots of money. So if he wants to invest his money in decarbonising the economy, that will be a good thing. He won't be lonely, because ASX companies everywhere are now working very hard to reduce their carbon footprints and investing in the technologies which will take us to zero net emissions into the future. That's a good thing. I think governments should pull back a bit and let business leaders take us on the right path. That is a path which reduces emissions but backs our traditional industries, those industries like the resources sector, which keep our economy strong.
Hey, Joel, by the way, if I could just add, Peter, it's
Campbell, please.
These things, I agree with what Joel's saying, but I'd like to add something. I think he'd agree. Let's see these projects happen without sort of targets that then sort of put constraints on our traditional exports, or sort of perverse sort of market distorting incentives or schemes. Let's just, let's let government back off and let the private sector deliver without subsidy.
Yes, that's what I was saying. Although, I mean, renewables have had their share of subsidies. I think it's time that some of the low carbon technologies received a bit of guidance and assistance from government as well. I mean, carbon, the International Energy Agency will tell you that the world can't meet its aspirations on lower emissions if we don't, for example, fully utilise and deploy carbon capture and storage. Now, that might need a little bit more government support and guidance along the way, and I think the industry should receive it.
Well, so do I, but your mob hasn't been exactly, cheerleaders for carbon capture and storage.
I didn't argue we have been, Peter. Although Kevin Rudd put $1.7 billion into it. And if my memory serves me correctly, I think Tony Abbott might have withdrawn that money in his first budget. You can probably confirm that.
I don't know about that, but no, I think more broadly the point is governments, politicians should not be ashamed to reflect the will of the people. Now, if the people aren't where business is on things like renewable energy, because it's all subsidised, and we know a lot of business people are in it for the money, then there's no shame in that. I don't think governments should be ahead of where the people are at. And they've shown in many elections that they want a moderate course that doesn't disadvantage jobs.
It's a
I want to ask you quickly,
Peter.
both of you, gentlemen, I've got to ask you about this tweet from Nigel Farage. He's put it out, and I think he's absolutely spot on. How can it be that the leader of the Taliban is tweeting on this very platform, but Donald Trump is banned? Now, I'm no great fan of Donald Trump, as you both know, but how have we got to a position, Campbell and Joel, where private tech giants in the Silicon Valley are deciding what stands for free speech in Australia? Joel Fitzgibbon.
Yeah, well, I saw this Farage tweet, Peter, and I tried to source the latest Taliban tweet. I wasn't able to find it, but if I, for the purpose of this conversation, if we assume it exists, it is a rather extraordinary thing, and it does look like quite a perverse decision for them to take. But I think in the end, we were just talking about people and their attitudes on traditional jobs and climate change. I don't think too many people in my electorate are too concerned about either what Donald Trump is or isn't tweeting, or indeed what the Taliban is tweeting. I just don't think that's on their agenda.
Yeah, but it's a point about free speech, Campbell.
Oh, it's free. Oh, absolutely, it's free speech. And look, it's okay for Joel, with the greatest respect. You're on the left side of politics, although sometimes I think you should be with us on the right, with your very sensible views on some of these climate issues and coal. We're on a unity ticket there. But look, it is about free speech. And those of us on the right are seeing all the time people being deplatformed, cancelled, their views sort of being suppressed. And Trump, again, I have the same views as you, Peter, but it shouldn't be happening when you've got other regimes. You've got brutal regimes around this world, I'm not going to mention any, who are into all sorts of human rights abuses of their own population, and they get to use Twitter just as this sort of broadcast megaphone to the world. It's outrageous. And, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, etc., they've got to do a much better job of showing fairness and equity in terms of political debate.
Gentlemen, I'm sure we'll be talking about that for many years to come. Have to leave it there. Thank you for your time.